What is your consumption function? Now, if you were asking Hurricane Harvey, what's your consumption function, you would have to look to the Washington Post, and in there is an article that would say, well, I'm Hurricane Harvey and I consumed 9 trillion gallons of water. Now that's a huge number, and my heart goes out to Texas, to the people there. I know some people there in Texas, but I don't know a lot of people in Texas. But we care. We care about the people in Texas. But we say about consumption, that's a lot of water. 9 trillion gallons of water that have been pulled out of the atmosphere, pulled out of the ocean, the Gulf, the seas of the world, and dropped in on land. Now that's, when you think about that, what is it that you do? What is it that you do? What is your consumption? So let's break it down. And I'm your leadership thought partner today. So let's think about what it is that you consume. You know, of course, you got some food. You're going to consume that. You're going to eat that. But even in that process, you're taking food and you're got an input. You got an input. You're going to have an input. You know, we talk about attitude, actions, you know, a plan, and many other things. Those are all inputs. And then, you know, you transform it into something and you may have a result. So you take a thought, you change it into a plan, and then you act upon the plan and make a result. Now, if on your own, even though you're not really doing it on your own, because there are elements that you're picking up from people who have given you that. So when you're making your eggs and, you know, your eggs and your bagel, for instance, for breakfast, what happens? Well, the eggs come from a chicken, maybe, depends on what type of egg, but say they come from a chicken. Okay, the chicken's giving you, you're going to consume something from that producer. Now, it may go through an intermediary. You may not have chickens live on your house, on your property, and so therefore you're going to go to a farmer or a person that has this big chicken farm that's going to produce eggs, so forth. You know, right? Bagel, same thing. We don't necessarily produce everything and consume it. We have to look to others to help us in our path, just for food. What happens about your workplace? In your workplace, you have some inputs. You have people giving you information, or if you're like I was, an analyst, you know, the transactions of the environment, of the customers, you know, their counts as far as, you know, balances in total and transaction changes, and you know, we looked at things from a broad perspective, and we modeled things. We modeled how the bank, what was on that bank's balance sheet, right? So we were getting inputs from others, from transactions, from everything else that we had to do, from a piece of software that took that input, you know, that we brought it together and then transformed it through several different processes to get a result, to get an analysis, to get a recommendation, then to give it to senior management and perhaps to the board of directors, and then took back those approved recommendations and any insights, and then we transformed them again back into actions to get a result, to actually put those plans into place or to change something that was already in place. So what do we do? Good morning, Lisa. Welcome. Talking about consumption function. We talked about the hurricane consuming 9 trillion gallons of water. And we're talking about what is our consumption. So what do we do during the day besides food? Maybe you consume exercise. You know, maybe you need, you know, you're using an input, you're using energy, and you're using some equipment to transform you. Well, what do you do during the day? Is it just to affect some small result, or are you consuming large amounts, like the hurricane? Are you consuming large amounts of input of things around you to be able to transform and lead to a bigger solution? So, we have people that go out in the community, they have a youth project. So it's something bigger than them. They need others to also help. So what's our consumption? Our consumption is the ability to take that morsel of energy, of attitude, of cooperation, of collaboration, and work together to take that input in, transform it, change it for a better purpose. How fast we do it is how fast we get to there. Now, things take time, but more hands make the work easier, wouldn't you say? If you have like-minded people, will you go further? Will you serve more? Will you help others to a greater extent than you alone could do? So speed leadership focuses on, well, what's that element? What's that trajectory? How fast are you going through these? What are the obstacles along the way? Because there could be obstacles in who you are and self-awareness and where your team is aware. The cooperation, the culture of the team, whether it's your family, whether it's your workplace, whether it is community effort, volunteer effort, paid effort, whatever. The more you put together, the faster you're going to go. I'm thinking off of these elements, and I'm brought back to a picture of volunteer effort that I was involved in. Now, this involved really not in a community per se of, youth or, food or, creating food banks or anything like that, but creating words, creating the efficiency of words, creating the efficiency of communication, the cooperation, the collaboration. We've talked about my participation in Toastmasters in the past, but just take that as an element. I'm there as the club president, and we hold multiple roles within that club meeting. And that club meeting, there was 25 people that were part of the club at that point. Well, my job was to make sure that my leadership team, our leadership team of the club, was actually working together and that everybody was doing their part. Now, if somebody didn't show up on that particular night, we were taking on an additional effort to make sure it ran smoothly, or we filled in where we needed to. For instance, being able to welcome the guests and take time with them to see where they're at and what they're looking for, helping them identify those parts within the meeting that would help them grow their skills. During the meeting, there's several different roles. Like a Toastmaster would be the MC for the program. There are speakers. There are a table topics facilitator, which is a short message, 1 to 2 minutes, usually. Consumption requires, if it's done right, to ensure efficiency of consumption has to be utilized greatly. You have to use every morsel, every bit. And that's why we talk about recycling so much, because we're putting out so much stuff that requires us to do something with it, because there's so many outputs. Besides the result, there's waste. Well, we don't want to be wasteful in our life, do you? Or do we? Do you? Do you want to be wasteful in your life? Do you want to work in on that effort to be more effective in communication and collaboration? That required, those wheels to work, those processes to work, those points where we needed to just simply go and work together so that we could help a speaker. We could help a speaker perform to their best ability and then help them for their next opportunity. Help them with guidance. How can you do it more effectively? How can your message come across more specifically? Well, each of those stories, each of those elements, each of those experiences in your life are stories. What's the story written? What does it look like? If you were to write out one story from this weekend, what would it look like in your book? Would you take your book, and my books are all now scattered. Would you take your book and write out a story? And how many pages would it take? Or would you take some time to just funnel it to the essence? What is the lesson that you learned? So the consumption function requires efficiency, it requires inputs, it requires collaboration, it requires the ability to taste each tantalizing morsel that is being consumed in our life, in your life, in what you do. Are you consuming to your most effective efficiency? Are you doing everything that you can to consume effectively how to grow? So when you read words, do you effectively translate those words and look at them and see what they mean to you, or do you just read for pleasure? Do you just read to get to the end of the book to find out what how the story ends? I used to do that a lot with sci-fi books because some of them were just repetitive and you would skip pages, or you would just like go real fast through some of it. Yeah, okay, common dialogue, and you're trying to get on to the next point. And then you find yourself nearing the end, and then you pay attention again to see how it's coming together. One of my favorite authors was Tom Clancy. He wrote The Hunt for Red October, Patriot Games, I believe. So many books in fiction and then also nonfiction. But I tended towards the fiction ones. And they're good stories because they brought together elements of collaboration, good and bad, and brought it together into harmony, into this end result. And he would have like 3 different storylines sprinkled through his chapters that would come out at the end into one event. We do not know where the ripple starts. We may start it, but something led us to start it. We do not know what the end result sometimes will be. If you put effort in to a project that's bigger than you, where are you going to be? What will it look like? You can imagine serving and helping a small group of people, but if everything clicks, if the speed of efficiency, of effectiveness, of collaboration, comes together, what do you get? You get a bigger result. You get a bigger bang. You get the 9 trillion gallons of water happening. Not for damage, but for good. There is good and there is bad in everything. In what we say, how we say it, and how we invest. Whether it's our attitude, whether it's our actions. If we don't give it all our all, we won't speed along. We won't have that plan starting to come to shape and that execution on the plan. We'll talk more in this week about plan and execution, but I wanted to place this with you. What is your consumption function? And what do you do with the stories that unfold for you? Do you write them down? Do you save them? Do you share them? Or do you just go along and waste them? Do you throw them aside? Coming this Wednesday night, if I may share this with you, we're not wasting 3 stories. We're going to bring 3 speakers for a half-hour event online, no cost, just register. There's 3 stories of change, 3 great stories. And stories are important. Stories of interpersonal struggle, of looking beyond towards something greater, accomplishing and experiencing the journey throughout. And they are meant to be shared and they are meant to be learned from. If nothing else, just listen to these 3 great speakers. These 3 speakers will take 6 minutes, 40 seconds. 20 slides, 20 seconds per slide. But it's not about the slide itself. There's very little on there other than a picture perhaps. but it's the story behind the picture that will touch you. And maybe it isn't. Maybe it won't touch you, but I'm sure you'll take away something, one thing, that you can then share with another. These are excellent stories. I encourage you to attend. The link is Great Stories AUG 2017. So Great Stories AUG 2017.eventbrite.com. Go to that link. We'll have it in the show notes. And hi, Jen, welcome. And we're just wrapping up, talking about how, what we do with our transformation. There's certain waste that we have, but the waste is either good or bad. Either there's nothing left to harvest from it, or there are additional lessons to learn. And out of those lessons, what are we doing with it? Are we transforming them and sharing them? Are we taking our lessons, our journey, our experiences, and sharing them further? So this Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 3 speakers, 6 minutes, 40 seconds per speaker. You don't want to miss it. And if you can't make it, if you just absolutely can't make it, then sign up. You'll still get the recording. Take the time to spend a little bit of consuming for you, of consuming for your growth, your personal growth. And maybe it's for your team's growth as well, because you can see partnerships and collaboration through these stories that are sprinkled together, that are brought together and ended in the result they did. Be well, have good things happen to you today, speed through effectively, and make sure your consumption function goes high. That you use everything that comes in and very little waste, if none at all. Waste not, want not. Even of your words, of your thoughts, of your actions, lead to a higher ground, look beyond, because you're going to be able to use those words and actions and experiences, whether they're yours, you're going to be able to use that for the journey beyond. The journey beyond of yourself at a future point where you get to that apex. When you're living at that apex, there's something more for you to come across. There's something for you to find in your life. Be well. See you tomorrow. And do good things, okay?